We had left off in the middle of the second halacha in Hilchos Shuvah, the fifth chapter, and he had said, "Al yavar b'machshavtecha davar zeh she'omrim tipshei umas olam." Don't even let it enter your mind for a moment what the fools of the nations of the world say. Rov Golmei b'nei Yisrael, and the majority of the Golmei Yisrael, people who are undeveloped, Jews. That every human being, it's predestined, it's decreed, whether you can be a tzaddik or a rasha. It's part of destiny. That's what the foolish nations of the world say, and that's what the undeveloped Jews, where they were not fully intellectually developed, that's their understanding. However, it's not correct. We said this yesterday. Every person could be as great as Moshe Rabbeinu, or Rosh Yeravam, or evil as Yeravam ben Nevat. O Chocham o Socho, you could be wise, you could be foolish. O Rachman o Alzori, it's with everyone's ability to be merciful or cruel. O Kili Oshua, or generous or miserly. Every one of the inborn or predilections which people exist, you're able to actually go in either direction. There's nobody to compel you to be paid differently. No one decrees. Nobody's drawing in either one of the two directions. But rather through your own initiative, one goes in direction which he chooses to go. I mean, the Rambam needs a little clarification. He says, no one's drawing you in either direction. Let's say a person has a very negative influence in his life. So you're drawn to that. You're born in a community where the value and the representations of whatever that is very negative. Automatically, you're attracted, you're drawn there. So you are drawn. The answer is you're only drawn, a person holds on to a rope and you hold tight and they pull you, you go along with the rope. What happens if you let go? As much as they pull, they can't pull you. So there's an element for you to be drawn, you have to be agreeable to be drawn. You have the ability to weaken that hold on you. That's your choice. That means nobody's drawing you there only because you're agreeable to be drawn. Otherwise, you wouldn't be pulled in that direction. In either direction, good or bad. The reason why I am influenced positively, because I agree to be open to that influence, that positive influence. And the reason why I'm influenced negatively, because I'm open and I have an interest to be negatively influenced. One more than the other. It doesn't make a difference, but the reason is because of that. However, as the Rambam says, if you find yourself in a community where the influences are overwhelming negative, move out. Change it. Why? Because as much as you allow yourself, as much as you're opposed to that, you only have so much ability. You can only hold on to that rope so long. Eventually, you lose your strength and you just fall identically. So what is your initiative there? If you stay, it's because you chose to stay. You could have left. What's the alternative? I have to go to a desert. I have to go to a cave. I have to go to a situation which is not to my liking, but it's the better of the choices. So that's so drawn means you're drawn, well, you have no choice as a result of being drawn. You have choice, okay? Yirmiyahu Omar, as Jeremiah the prophet says, Mipi Elyo lo setzi haros vatov, from the mouth of the exalted one, meaning from Hashem's mouth, it's not decreed not evil and not good. Evil and good is up to each person. You want to be a tzaddik, you can be a tzaddik. God forbid one chooses to be a Rasha, you can be a Rasha. Klomar, ein abore gozel la'odam lios tov v'lo lios ra. The Creator does not decree that whether a person should be good or evil. V'kein v'shekain, and since this is the reality, it's up to each person taking initiative. Shekenu nimtza ze'achote hu ahifsid es atzmo. So the sinner, why is he in the position to be in not a good predicament? He brought it upon himself. You don't have to be the sinner. That your predicament is you're a sinner and you're subject to punishment. That's because you chose to be the sinner. It's like a person chooses to do a criminal act, and now he's caught. Why is he being punished? Because he made a choice. He brought it upon himself. So if this is the case, that we're fully culpable and held accountable for our sins, one should cry and bemoan himself for his sins, what he did to his soul, that he brought harm upon it. But again, the Rambam says, but it's never too late. You can always do tshuva. What does a person bemoan himself? What does one grieve over? How we hurt ourselves, how we forfeit our lives. But as long as you're alive, it's never too late. There's always that miracle recovery. It's called tshuva. Since we're in our own domain, and we chose to do all this evil, we are the perpetrators of our evil. Therefore, it's appropriate we should do tshuva, repent, and abandon our evil ways. As long as we're alive, you have the ability. Jeremiah writes, let us search out our ways, introspect our ways, and delve in the Shuv El Hashem and return to God. But you realize, one only does tshuva if you recognize your predicament. If you don't recognize, the less you recognize how severe that predicament is, the less motivated are you to make changes. I'll give you an example. Person likes to eat things which are very high in carbohydrates. Okay? He enjoys it. Doctor says, you know something? If you eat that kind of food, you're going to gain weight and you're going to have, it's going to cause you high blood pressure. Person says, it's not the end of the world. I have blood pressure medication. A lot of people are overweight. So his desire to eat causes him to have this insensitivity to understand what the consequence of that is. What about is he diabetic? And he has medication for that also. But you realize, they used to say, a person digs his grave with his fork and knife. That's how you dig your grave. So the same thing. People bring upon their own predicament by their own choices because they succumb to their desires, whether it's ego, whether it's physical desire, whether it's gluttony, whatever it is, doesn't make a difference. So what do you have to do? So you have to recognize, he says, Nachpsa drachenu. Let's do our due diligence. Let's introspect, evaluate our ways. V'nachkoro. It's not enough just to introspect. You have to go deep. You have to delve into it. Only once you have an appreciation of how sick you are, how bad it is, in the Shuv El Hashem, and only then you do tshuva. Now, a person already had a heart attack because he smoked 3 packs a day and he didn't take care of his health. And he's in the hospital, lying on the bed there. And the doctor says to him, what do you think you're here? Because he lived a life which was totally responsible. That's why that's why the person had the heart attack. Emphysema. Person needs a lung machine to breathe, everything. Who brought this down him? Doesn't that by itself. And the person will give anything to be able to breathe. He needs a lung transplant. Otherwise, he's going to die. Could you imagine they give him the lung transplant and he's back to the cigarettes again? But again, it's a habit. It's not easy to break a habit, but it's still within your ability to be able to make that change and to restrain yourself. That's what Rambam's saying. That's what the Yirmi HaNavi is saying. You should bemoan and cry your situation for the sins that you brought upon yourself. And how do you go about doing it? Introspect, delve into your ways, and then you return to God. No, there's an expression in English, people never wake up. Some people never wake up. Never. As whatever is happening, as they say, they don't get it. They don't get it. How do you not get it? The world's coming down, it's collapsing all around you. How do you not get it? Well, I think I'm doing okay. Okay? You believe what you want. What we're speaking about now is a main primary fundamental in Judaism. Amud HaTorah v'Mitzvah. This is the foundation, the pillar that upholds Torah and mitzvah and the commandments. Shenemar runosati l'fonecha hayom es hachayim. Moshe Rabbeinu says, the name of God, I'm presenting before you today life. Uchsiv re'anochinos l'fnechem hayom. I'm presenting before you today. What does it mean today? Klomar. Harshus biyetchem v'chol sheyachbot odom lasos memase b'nei odom. Ose bein tovim bein roim. A human being has the ability, and it's within his ability to do anything he chooses. All kinds of behavior which is out there in mankind, good or bad. Therefore, Moshe says, therefore, a person has to be in touch to be able to see clearly. God doesn't compel you, doesn't force you to do good or evil, does not make a decree. It's up to you. Everything is given is in man's hands. As you say, the way you make your bed, you sleep. That's it. Person has a car, and he services it every 5,000 miles. It runs in top shape, doesn't deteriorate. The person doesn't change the oil, doesn't change the spark plugs, doesn't rotate the tires, doesn't everything. Within a short period of time, once he goes beyond a certain point, it starts falling apart. Identically, the human being. There's a maintenance program. There's a physical maintenance, there's a spiritual maintenance. But God says, I've endowed you with intelligence, you have an understanding, you have initiative. If you go with the way the wind blows, then you got a problem. But if you have fundamental values and perspectives and morals and ethics and beliefs, and you're committed to those, then you understand life is in your hands to do as you choose, to do right or to do wrong. That's the reality. A woman, I gotta record this. Ikar Gadol, who it's a core fundamental principle, Amud HaTorah v'Mitzvah, and that is the pillar. That's the underpinning of Torah and what? A mitzvah. That we have the ability. And it's up to us. It's up to nobody else but us. What is choice? Choice is only choice if you see an alternative. You see two things, I have to make a choice. What about if a person is so one-sided, he doesn't see an alternative? that person has very little choice. Because he believes there's only one way. He doesn't understand there's an alternative. A person who grows up in a community or a society, there's good and evil, you understand, you can make that discernment. There's good, there's evil. I see the difference. It's up to me to make the choice. Where do I want to go? But let's say a person grows up in a ghetto. He's a ghetto child. He only saw one way. How much choice does he have? Not much. Because choice is always making a choice. Discerning. This person, there's nothing to discern. He only sees one way. So when we speak about a person has the choice to be good or evil, he has to have a context that you see there's alternative to whatever this is. But if you see no alternative, the person doesn't have much of a choice. If God would decree a person should be a tzaddik or Russia, and you have no choice but to be the tzaddik or the Russia, O ilu hoya shem dover shemoshe has odom beikar told us so. L'derach min hadrochim. Person would be born with a certain, let's say, defect, genetic defect, which would cause him to behave a certain way, and he can only behave that way. O lemada min amados, o l'der min adeus, to a certain science, to a certain value system, o lemase min amasim, or an action. K'moshe bodim milibom hatipshim. Hovre shemayim, as people, these fools, they create these fictitious positions. Heichaya mitzvah lono al yidei hanavim. Asekach val tasekach. Heitivu darkechem. Ubetchilas brioso, farnigzul olov oltodoso, tipshach osel dover, sheefsher afilosmenu. If theoretically a person would be pre-decreed that you can't change and you have to be exactly what you meant to be from the time you're born, what's the value of the Torah? Person doesn't do a mitzvah, he has no choice. He can't do a mitzvah. Person does a mitzvah, he has no choice but to do the mitzvah. If that would be the reality of life, the tzaddik's a tzaddik because he has no choice but to be the tzaddik. And the evil person, he has no choice but to be evil. What's the value of the Torah? God gives a commandment. You must. What do I must? I have no choice. If you predestined to do good, you do good. And he can only do good. And if you predestined to do bad, you only do bad. That means you don't listen. So what's the Torah all about? What is it? It's a game. You go through motions. It's like a bunch of robots. Why is it Russia culpable and deserving of punishment? He had no choice. And why is the tzaddik deserving of reward? Doing the right thing is not based on his initiative. It's unrelated to him. The one who judges existence, he doesn't do justice. It's not justice. Man has no ability to do differently than evil. How could he be held accountable for doing evil? And the tzaddik, he's destined only to do good, and he can't do differently. Why is he deserving of reward? For what reason? Val tetama v'tomar. Hechi odam ose komashi yachbo tziyamasa besurin lo. Okay, just let's stop for a moment. Hold.